welcome to the Improv Summit. I am your host, Spencer. With me today, I have Jay. Jay, how's it going today?
It's great. Thanks for having me. It's really good to talk with you, Spencer.
You too. Thanks for joining. I love improv. You love improv. I just want to give people a chance to understand that improv is not like just like this is improv. There's a lot of different nuances, and I'm not very good at object work, which we'll discover as we talk. I like to say things and like do object work, and I always have my little typing computer like this. That's what I've got to challenge myself with is object work from here on out. But
That's a
enough about me.
solid. That's a solid high typewriter too.
I know that Typey does this, so I just do that. But enough about me. Let's talk about you. Let's talk about your background in improv. What is your improv background?
Well, my parents gave me classes to Second City in the suburbs of Chicago. There used to be a Second City in Rolling Meadows, Illinois, called Second City Northwest. And so I would drive up I was going to college. It was my last semester, and I'd drive up 3 hours to take this improv class on Saturday at noon. And it was just so much fun. It was not like, it wasn't a stepping stone to anything else. It was just like, this is fun. Like a bowling club or a football co-ed football team. It was just something to do, and I just started to take more classes and do it more. But there was an attraction that it was a dead end job. Like there was no going anywhere, and I like that. I like the fact that it wasn't going to lead to anything, or so I thought. But I kept taking classes and doing shows, and then was like, I was in a group that said, let's go take a class at this other theater called Improv Olympic, and there's this guy Del Close, and so the whole kind of the class went and took a class there, and that just started what turned to be almost now 30 years of an improv career was based on those classes.
That's awesome. And I got to say, it's so funny because everyone I've started to interview has been saying Improv Olympic now instead of IO. And I guess because it's closed, like there's no real worry about the Olympics coming after the improv school.
Well, that is true. It was a cease and desist for Olympic, but when I started, it was Improv Olympic, and then for a while it was Improv Olympics with an X for a hot minute or so. It was like Improv Olympic. And this David Shepard founded it, and it was a competition. It was like short form games is what the origination of that theater was. And then, they got a cease and desist letter, and so they had to go as IO for most of their time, I think.
Yeah, I only know it as IO. I mean, I knew like studying through IO, I knew that it was originally called Improv Olympic, but I only know it. I've only seen the marketing as IO, so it's been a while since they've had to change that. But now I guess it doesn't matter.
It's all done.
R.I.P. I mean, I loved it, but I mean, good things come to an end, I suppose.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's hard to be like, it's hard to say, I'm going to make an improv theater viable before COVID. And then with the pandemic, it's like, how do you translate that live experience to virtual? It's tough for a lot of theaters, as we're seeing.
Well, even like in the 70s and the 80s, like there was not really a market that's like, I want to see improv shows. That's the thing I really am wanting to do on a Friday night. So even from the start, I feel like that was a tough market to crack.
We really enjoy the play, but what if you just don't rehearse the script and just come up with something off the top of your head? We'd really like to see that.
Yeah, and then throw a couple of drinks, a couple bars in there, a couple of drinks every, whenever I'm not working, I'm sure it'll be great. And then we'll charge $15-$20 for each show. It'll be, you'll love it. You can spend $50 a night and not have to go anywhere.
Huge.
Yeah, so maybe that's also one thing is $10, $15, $20 tickets. Maybe not the most viable price for tickets. But
I mean, I had a buddy who back in the day, he said there was only one $5 bill floating around improv. And like you would pay somebody you go see their show, and then they take that money and see your show. So, I mean, it's hard to sustain something when it's a ticket price that is that low. So we'll see. I think this is a good reset, though. What we're doing right now, I think it's a really good reset to kind of start anew.
Absolutely. I think it's been one thing, at least for virtual improv, it's been great because I've been able to take classes like from places that aren't near me. but also I've been able to explore like genre classes, which is really exciting, and different things that I haven't explored yet. So it's fun to get different perspectives and different types of improv. And I think driving around a lot in LA, it's just going to be impossible for me to pack my schedule with all those classes. But because I'm not having to go anywhere,
Mm.
I'm able to stack those 2 hours I'd spend driving with a class instead. So it actually gives me a lot more information. Now, maybe I'm overloading myself with information. And so sometimes that's like, oh, I'm ready for the class to be over. I just can't think anymore. But I think that's how I felt when I was driving everywhere to classes. But now that I don't have to drive anywhere, I can focus all the energy into the class as opposed to focusing my energy on making sure I get there on time, making sure I leave on time, making sure there's not enough traffic or not enough traffic, not too much traffic. But I think it's helpful to have everything in one place. That all being said, there's so much improv. Do you have any favorite types of improv, like whether short form, long form, genre, whatever it is? And if there's any kind of short form that you like, do you have any favorite games or any favorite warm ups that really help you get in the zone before an improv show?
Well, there's only one true form of improv. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I was like, where are you going with this?
uh, uh, like honestly, my first thought is anything that brings awareness to improv, I'm a fan of. So whether it's like a
Mm,
short form or long form or middle ditch and Schwartz or improvised Shakespeare or improv comedy Bangalore, anything that's like this will raise the awareness of it. I'm a fan of. I'm also a fan of just being silly. So silly improv, silly comedy, innocent, like we're all the audience and the performers are all part of this party and we're all going to enjoy it, and it could be somebody who's 7 can enjoy it as well as somebody who's in their 90s. I'm really a fan of improv that incorporates the audience as part of the experience and then
mm,
is
mhm.
more of the playful fun kind. And I had gone through phases where I'm like, we have to say something with this art. Like I've been in that improv world, but right now it's like, and with what's happening, I think what we need more than anything is just playful, silly fun. And so whether
Mhm.
it's short form or long form or genre, any of that stuff, if it's silly fun, I'm a fan of. I like things also that people take a little like they take pride in. So I'm not a big fan of people just running on stage and being like, wearing overalls or like cut off shorts. Like I want people to take a little pride in what they do, and like
Sure.
there's a saying of like, if you're having fun, they're having fun. It's like, well, that's true, but you have to have fun with them. It can't just be at the expense of your audience where it's like, wow, look at those 6 people on stage really having a lot of fun at the expense of us. So
Mhm.
anything that has the whole place laughing and enjoying, I think is marvelous. So I'm not as discerning as like it has to be this form or style, but I'm really of a mindset of like, did the audience leave going, wow, I want to come back, or I want to know how that's done. Like that to me is the mark of a really fun, enjoyable show.
Mm. And again, that word fun being tossed around, I feel like that's what people forget is that improv's supposed to be fun. If you're not having fun, um, either you're not doing improv right, or if you just like can't stand improv, maybe it's just not for you. But improv should be fun. It shouldn't be like stressful. It shouldn't feel like you're like at school. It shouldn't feel like you're at
Yeah.
work. It should feel like you're having a good time doing it.
And that's
So
that's for the audience and the performers. Like
yeah. Oh yeah. Both.
you
Yeah. If you're an
should.
audience member and you can't and you don't like improv, don't go to improv show.
Well,
like
it's the only art form. It's the only comedy form, the only art form that somebody will see one show, and if it's not to their liking, they'll never see improv again.
mhm.
No, like you don't get that with music, you don't get that with a play, you don't get that with stand up. People will go see that stuff again, but if they see an improv show that is just it like is offensive or waste their time or just isn't enjoyable to them, they'll write off the art form completely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
It's
give it give it a cup. I generally say this with like TV shows that I watch. You can't really judge a show on its first episode. It's literally the first episode. I try to give it 3 to 4 episodes, and if
yeah.
I'm not hooked within 3 to 4 episodes, I tend to tune out. But I feel like improv is the same way. Like if I go to one show, maybe it was an off night, maybe it wasn't a team that I liked, but it's like also if I watched a show with Team A, maybe I didn't like it. Let me go see a show with team B or team C. Or in the case of like improv, you've got regular improv, two prov, musical improv, genre improv, all these different kind of things. Maybe I didn't like regular improv, but maybe I'll love musical improv. Like, don't necessarily go see the same team, the same type of show, the same night. Like, don't go every Friday night to see the same team. Switch it up. Go on a Friday night, go on a Saturday night, go on a Sunday afternoon. Go see
Oh,
different types of improv. Maybe that specific. Maybe you don't like. So I know people who are like, I don't like musical improv because I don't like singing, I don't like instruments, I don't like music. I'm like, yeah, well then maybe musical improv's not for you. But, but then when they, but it's like I know we don't like music, but then even then, I'll go see like improv shows with these people, like these people, and then they're like, "It was so cool that they did a musical improv number, an improv show," and I'm like, "But you don't want to see musical improv, but you like the fact that they did a musical number
in
in
the
a
show.
non-musical show." And I'm like, "I don't understand you, but that's okay. I don't understand a lot of things in general." So it's just interesting how sometimes people, maybe it's like musical improv is too musical for them, but having like just a little dose is like perfect. And then people like me, I love musical improv. It's probably my favorite kind of improv, honestly, is musical improv. And also like really bad pun stuff, which a lot of people don't like puns, but I love puns.
Oh, I love puns. And I think puns that make you groan, I love that as well.
Mm. Oh, yeah, I have a story to tell you about one. I'll tell you about it later. When I was doing a comedy sports show as the announcer, getting a groaner foul called on me as the announcer in the
Oh,
booth,
ah,
and having to apologize to the audience. That was real wonderful. I'm
mwah.
like, I'm not even getting points. I don't know why this matters. um, but anyway, that being said, there's a lot of reasons that someone takes improv. For me, I took it because I went through, an internship in college that really like made me lose all confidence in myself as a human.
Oh my God.
And it was really rough. And so I spent a lot of time between college, and then I went to grad school, and then I moved out to LA. And during all that time, I was like, I don't know if I'm good enough. I don't know if I could do this. I don't know if this and that and the other. And I took some improv classes because I was like, I just need something for my resume. But when I started taking improv classes, it made me realize that I was starting to build this confidence, and like I
Mm.
stopped worrying about being right and being good and being like, am I good enough? Am I not, or whatever. I just had fun. And so it went from me being like, I'm just taking a couple of classes at IO, that's fine, to me graduating the IO program, graduating Second City Hollywood, graduating from Comedy Sports, graduating from UCB, taking the musical improv programs at UCB, Second City, IO, Comedy Sports, doing Shakespeare improv, Jane Austen improv, all these
Mm.
different improv classes, which I never thought I would do, but now I'm so addicted to it because I've seen the times that I've grown, and I've seen those moments where I go, aha, I get this now. And sometimes it took for people who are watching and listening, sometimes it took me, one class I figured it out. Sometimes it took me a whole program to figure it out.
Yes.
And sometimes, and there are still things I'm still trying to figure out after now having dove in for like 5 6 years, four
Mm.
4 years, 5 years, I don't remember, 5 years, 4 years, I guess, maybe going on 5 years. um and I think that that's one thing that drew me to improv and continue to take improv, is because I um, started to feel the confidence coming back. But enough about me. My question for you is, what drew you to improv and kept you sticking with improv, even if things were rough or you weren't quite figuring things out or whatever the case was? What kept you coming back?
Well, your setup here reminds me of a lot of times it's about the teacher too. Like sometimes that concept of whatever it is, even though one teacher might explain it the same way, it connects with the way another teacher tells it to you at that moment in time. So sometimes it's like, to me, the teachers were such a big part of my training and my love for improv, and that sense of I don't think I really had a teacher that was like, for the first year, I didn't have a teacher that was like very aggressive or angry. So that fostered my love of this to where I was like, oh, this is super. I'm having a fun time. But honestly, the number one reason I kept doing improv was the first group that sprung out of this class I was in. We went on to kind of form not kind of, we went on to form a sketch and improv group. And we were lucky enough to do shows at Second City. And then we said, let's all take a class at this theater, and we stayed together. And so that sense of community, that sense of ensemble really struck a chord in me, because it reminded me of sports, where it
Mm.
was like, I'm part of a team. I just do, okay, I'm this position in this group, and then they do that thing, and then that person, and we all look good at the end. So that's what, to me, has always kept me in, is I feel like improvisers are the most interesting people in the world, and having conversations before the show or before the class, or conversations nothing to do with improv, but they're just so interesting. Those are the things you start remembering more than the shows. When you first get involved and you start doing shows, you're like, boy, I want the show to go really well, or I've got so and so in the audience, or I'm very nervous about this show and I hope it goes well. And but then as you do more of it, you're like, oh, I know the show's going to go well. I really look forward to seeing these people before the show and talking to them after the show. So it becomes less about the stage product and more about the other stuff. And it's
Mhm.
really like, some of my most fun improv moments have been standing with friends of mine, just doing bits together on the streets of Chicago, just hanging out outside like a bus stop, just because it's like, oh, I got nothing going on. Let's hang out and do this. And so I think having those moments, those are the memories, those are the things that keep you going. It just happens to be that the improvisers are the most important and most interesting people to me. So meeting people like you and meeting some of my friends, and I look back at when I came up and all the people I met. Like, I had a friend who's a world renowned eye surgeon who does comedy sports, and doesn't want to do any other show. He's like, I only want to do comedy sports. That's it. I don't want to do any other improv shows. But then you meet other people who it's like, oh, what's your background? What do you do during the days? And they're just so interesting. And that to me is the thing that keeps me going. Also, I had to take a break for a little bit, because I was
Mm.
like, I'm doing too much, because I was doing too
Mhm.
much improv. All my friends were improvisers. I was living in a 3-story building with improvisers. And it was like, ooh, it got to be, I was very young too. I was like 25 maybe, or 26. And I was like, this is taking over too much of my life, because I don't have anything else in it. So I had to find, for me, I had to find a balance. And now
Mhm.
I feel like I've got a really nice balance. And it has to do a lot with the people who I'm still friends with. Like, my best friends are all pretty much improvisers.
Yeah, you're it's so interesting how everything you said, I was like, yes, I agree with this because I have this example. Yes, I agree with that because there's so many nuggets that I'm pulling, and I wanted to talk about a couple that really made me stand out, and it'll lead into my next question, I think, if I do this correctly. Um, but one thing you said, which is a common thing that I keep bringing up, but you actually brought it up, is the idea of sports. It's a team sport, and what I've noticed is I'm not. I wouldn't say that I follow sports that often. Like, I understand how sports work. I understand, like, Super Bowl versus uh the NBA, all these different things, like NFL versus NHL versus NBA. I understand all these things. I don't necessarily watch sports. I don't really care that much. But one thing that I noticed is that when I get a sports metaphor in an improv class, I tend to understand those. They tend to click for me for whatever reason, because it's like literally you're setting me up for success, because it's like, think of it as if it's the umpire, and it's like, oh, what does the umpire do? Okay, got it. Like, it's so you're like, okay, you're getting ready, you're at bat. Here's where you're at bat. I'm like, okay, I know what that feeling is. I know what it's like to be at bat. I know that I'm getting ready to hit a ball. That's all I need to know, and then I can translate that how I want. So I love this idea of calling it a team sport, because it does take these fundamentals of sports and just throws it into comedy, as opposed to a physical workout. And so I think that that's what's interesting. Another thing that you brought up that I thought was that I was like, oh yeah, I remember this too, is the community.
Mm.
I loved so I did the conservatory program for Second City, and I because I had done IO at the time, I was able to jump right into Con 1. I didn't have to take the short form levels. I just had to jump straight into Con 1, and I took a class with it was like on a Tuesday night or whatever, and everyone in that class had already taken Improv 1, 2, and 3 together. So when I jumped in, they were like, "Who are you?" And then I explained who I was, and then they, like, I was welcomed within like the first like 5 minutes of class. But then we did Con 1, we did Con 2, we did Con 3, we did Con 4, we did Con 5, then it was like devastating because we got split up during grad review because there's only so many spots and they actually try and mix you up during grad review.
Yeah.
But I remember how it was like, oh, someone was like, I have to work during most of the Tuesday nights, so I have to skip con 4, so I won't be able to join you guys in con 5 or con 4. We're like, no, like it was so devastating to like not have that person. And it's interesting because when I take like an acting class or when I take any other kind of classes, it's like, all right, the class is over, people left or whatever, no big deal. But with improv, it feels so different. It feels like there's a connection, like some kind of a family in this class. And like there are certain classes where I'm like, this isn't my vibe, this isn't my groove, but this place, I want to stay with these people forever. I want to be a team with these people. And so it's interesting that you brought that up because I feel the same way as soon as you were talking about it. And the other thing it made me think of was when you said you felt like you were doing too much. It's interesting how I've done a lot of improv auditions, which are a whole nother can of worms on their own. Very weird.
Oh
But
yeah.
I did one audition and I got feedback and it was like, keep trying, keep working, blah, 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 blah. And then I did the audition again. I got called back both times. I didn't get it. The second time after the callback, I didn't get it. And they're like, I know you're disappointed. I just wanted to let you know, whatever you're doing this time, keep doing that because I could see your confidence. I could see you're getting better. And I was like, great. And I was like, what did I do in those 6 months? And I literally was like, I didn't take a class. I didn't think about improv for 6 months. I didn't do anything. And I think what helped was that I came in with such a fresh perspective instead of being like, well, this place told me this, and this place told me this, and this told me this, and this told me this, and now I have all this information in my noggin that I literally went, oh, I didn't do anything. I took a break. And what I think is interesting is people are like, they don't want to take those breaks because they want to keep going and going and going and going. But I think it's very helpful sometimes if you feel like you need that break. It's okay to take a term off. Like, but what's it going to do? It's not like you're going to graduate 5 years later. It's like
Well,
take 8 weeks off.
you look at it like, if I take a break, am I losing my place in this line, this assembly line, which of like, oh, now I'm going to be pushed back. So I need to be on this at this point because
Mhm.
for some reason that's going to assure me a spot in the next round, whatever that is. And you realize, yeah, the more I can bring other stuff to the stage, the more I can go, hang on a second, let me just clear my brain. The more you tell yourself, all right, none of this matters. None of this matters. What that person says to me as a teacher is just their opinion. It doesn't make me a better improviser. Like sometimes it's just a style is not fitting. It's like, oh, they don't like my style. It doesn't mean like they don't like you as an improviser.
Mhm.
And that's a great example of somebody goes, whatever you were doing. It's like, well, that's your,
Mhm.
you're supposed to tell me that because you're an
Yeah.
outside observer. So
What a note.
yeah, and I'll tell you what, like, here's the most overrated note that auditors give improvisers during auditions. Um, yeah, you need to work on your emotional connection. Like that shit is said all the time, and it's because
Uh-huh.
they don't know what to say sometimes, or they say like,
Mhm.
play more characters. It's like, well, what exactly does that mean? So like the pandemic,
Broaden your horizons.
broaden your horizon. It's like those are all just general notes because they don't know how to say what the truth is sometimes, which is like it could be devastating, it could be helpful, or it could be somewhere in between. You know, I've
Mhm.
been in auditions where somebody goes, she's going to move on to this conservatory because she works at the desk outside my office and I don't want to have to walk by her every day and watch her look at me. So then that person got in. So it really is just a crapshoot of why you're going to get in or not get in, and taking a breather and reassessing and go, let me take a breath here. And my experience is a lot of times because you're laughing with that group of people once a week in class,
Mhm.
of course you don't want it to end. And then it gets done and it's like, well, what's next? And somebody goes, we're auditioning for this conservatory. And then people go, okay, I'm going to audition. It's like, well, but do you want to do that? Do you want to use improv to write, like for Second City, to write political and satirical sketch comedy? Well, no, but they don't know what else to do. Like they don't
Mhm.
have an alternative. So they're like, I'm bummed. I'm not, I didn't get that audition. It's like, but you didn't want that audition. But they're bummed because that community's broken up. And that week of like, no matter what, every Tuesday, 7 to 10, I'm going to be laughing. I'm going to see these people where I really enjoy hanging out with them. They accept me for the weirdo that I am, and we can have a lot of fun. So you're taking that element away. It's not as much about the product as it is that part of it, to
Mhm.
me, in my opinion.
I completely agree, and it makes me think of like I love improv, and when I did Second City, I love the Second City program. I love it a lot. Their philosophy is improv to sketch. So you
Yeah.
start taking improv and then you re-improvise, which for those that don't know, it's taking an improv scene, getting notes, and just doing the same scene again, and then eventually writing it down until it feels like you've got a solid idea. And then you take those ideas and then you turn them into sketches. You pitch sketches, you pitch ideas. And I love the program. I was like, I want to do it. I love it. I've learned throughout doing that program that I much more prefer improv than sketch, whereas other people much prefer sketch to improv. So, and we'll get to this later, but like if someone really wants sketch, I would say I would take Second City because you're going to get a better option of sketch. If you want just improv, I would say iOS, but that's obviously not an option I can give anymore. But like iOS or yeah, rest in peace iOS. I loved it. But or like UCB if you're wanting to think like a writer and being able to adapt quickly as a
Yeah.
writer and changing jokes. That's kind of like pitched as like a writer with heavy game, or like comedy sports I love because I generally am very like PG with my improv. So I feel like I can, and that's G rated. So for me, comedy sports works with my brain. I teach kids. So having
Yeah.
something that they can actually see me do is really helpful because I can't guarantee, like in a Second City show or an IO show or a
Oh my
UCB show,
God.
that the rest of my team is going to be G rated as well. I can't guarantee that.
Well, and that goes back to the seeing improv, where it's like you see improv, you can't guarantee that. I mean, you're almost always on the bill with other groups.
Mhm.
You can't guarantee what they're going to do that night. You can't even guarantee what your own team is going to do that night unless you have a team that's like, constantly rehearsing and people are like, this is my one group, this is the group I'm committed to. Then you have more of a chance to succeed that night as far as like what comes out of people's mouths. But like when you're in a group with 3 or 5 other teams on a night, it's like I
Mhm.
I was very uncomfortable even when I was playing like Improv Olympia or IO. I'd be doing like weekend shows in Chicago, and it's like, I don't know what this other group's going to do that night, and that's like the improv theater. So that's
Mhm.
another reason it gets really hard, is because you're just not you don't have everybody on the same page. And I was lucky that first group I was with, we made a conscious choice to be like, we're going to play clean, like we're going to challenge ourselves with language and everything else to see if we can make
Mhm.
alternative choices that are not dirty. And that I loved. I was like, ooh, let's do this. It made it a lot harder, but also I felt like I grew a lot more as a performer, because if you can find humor in things that aren't just like, the low hanging fruit or just the
Mhm.
shock value, but if you find humor in bigger things, I think that makes you a better performer.
It's funny because when I teach like improv to like 5 to 8 year olds, like very young, like kids who really don't care about like if
Yeah.
they're good or if they're not. They just want to have fun. And the things that they find funny are like it's like get a location inside a box. They just love being inside a box. I don't know why that's so exciting, but
Because it
for
could be
them, it's
anything.
like
It could be
yeah,
anything.
yeah. It's so fascinating. But it's like if kids find boxes funny, why can't adults find boxes funny?
Well, because a kid at that age, you ask those kids who can sing, raise your hand. Everybody raise their hand. Who can dance? Everybody raises their hand. You ask an adult who can sing, a couple people sheepishly put their hands up. It's like, no, no, I didn't say if you could do it well. So we put these limitations on ourselves,
Mhm.
including our imagination, and we go, where a kid says something, it's more likely to be received. An adult says something where it's like, we're in a box. It's most likely to be this. Ugh, get out of the box.
Mhm.
That's most. And if you watch a lot of improv as adults, there is a lot of improv that's like at arm's length. They're like, I don't want to look foolish. And it's like, but that's why we're doing it, is to look
Mhm.
foolish and silly. And when you have somebody who throws out an idea and it's greeted with a yeah, everybody loves it. The audience loves it. The performers love it. But too many times when we have an idea thrown out there and then a partner like waits to see what they're going to do, or critiques it, or says like, enough about the box, let's get back to talking about this divorce, like they ignore it. So the difference is,
Mhm.
Kids see things as possibilities, and kids are also the most in the moment. They don't care. They don't understand what tomorrow is.
Mhm.
I have a 5 and 7 year old, man, and they're just like, I cannot punish them. I cannot say like, well, tomorrow you're going to lose dessert. They don't care. They're like, fine. Tomorrow to them is
Yeah.
so far away. They're worried about right now and everything in this moment. And with a box, it's like, here, I'm going to grab a marker. We're going to mark on it. It could be an airplane. Now it's going to be a horse. Like they can see the possibility,
Mhm.
and we limit our imaginations as we become older. Whereas we need the to be adults and to have play. The importance of play in adults is why Viola Spolin, who was the mother of Paul Sills, who founded the Second City, she studied and knew the importance of play in adults with Neva Boyd. And it goes back to those two women. That is the basis for what we do in improv. So
Mhm.
we can't forget, and we don't want, we joke. Have you ever been before a show in the green room and you're just doing bits and it's hilarious? And then it's like, it's a long form show. And then you walk on stage and it's like, now we're going to improvise.
Mhm. Oh,
And we
yeah.
drop all that shit because we're so worried about the form. And are we doing a herald? Are we doing an inverted here? Our mind is all over the place. Whereas you go back to being a kid, they're like, oh, let's get in the box. And then the other kid goes, yeah, I'll be the co-pilot. Like they're natural adding to that. And they don't
Mhm.
have it be real complicated. And too many times we go, that's not good enough. Let's complicate it. It's not good enough just to say yes
Mhm.
and let's add a format to it. Yeah, it's not good to have a format. Let's add this other thing. So sometimes we want to complicate things because I think that's just what humans do.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I always am a big proponent of like seeing kids and like seeing teens um perform improv, because one thing I do is like as someone who teaches kids, but also like, running their shows or, like subbing for other classes and all of this stuff. I took a UCB class with a teacher that I absolutely love. And UCB likes to give you like, here's my little typing, likes to give
Yeah.
you notes. They give you a grade and then they give you notes, and people freak out about the grades. Don't worry, the grades are nothing, but
Yes.
they give you feedback, individualized feedback, which I think is great. And one of the notes she said, every week you come into class and you talk about when you teach these kids these things that they're doing that you wish you could do and all these things. And she said, I want you to know this. You can do that. You just have to do it. And when she said that, I was like, you're right. I can do this. I can get in a box and say I'll be the co-pilot. I don't
Yes.
know. I don't know why I didn't think I couldn't do that, because I'm like, I wish I could do what these kids are doing. And she's like, you can. And as soon as she said that, I was like, "You're right, I can. Why not?" And then, because I've auditioned for Comedy Sports, I've auditioned for Really Awesome Improv Show. I took that with me to at least with Really Awesome Improv Show auditions this year, which I got in. Um, but I took that and I was like, "Okay, I got a suggestion." I'm like, "If I was a kid, what would I do as a kid?" And the suggestion I remember from the callback, I don't remember. I think it was like lawyer or something, and it was a Foursquare. And my first thought was to go, "Ugh, I'm not great with scenic games. Foursquare is not my greatest." But I threw that idea out. I was like, let me just be in the moment and see what's going to happen. Because the second I get a game that I don't think I'm good at, I start to panic. So I was like, let's see what happens. So we got the suggestion. It was like lawyer, and I went, you know what? I'm going to make a physical choice. So I just laid down on the stage and just kind of like started doing this. And my scene partner goes, "Sir, I know it's been a stressful day, but you have to get back out there and do the trial or whatever." And I literally went as if I was a kid, but I was an adult. I went, "I don't want to. I'm so tired." And then it was this whole like thing of me being a high status character who's really downplaying the status that he has, and I didn't have to do a lot of talking. All I had to do was this like big physical movement, and it became this funny scene. And I was like, kids would find that funny, of an adult crying on the ground. Like that's what kids find
Yeah.
funny. And
Yeah.
so it's like a thing where like certain improv styles require certain parts of your brain. And that was when it finally clicked, when I got that note of like, what these kids are doing, you can do it. You just have to do it. And I was like, I don't know why I didn't think that I couldn't do it. I literally can do it.
Well, but I mean, the importance of that teacher, right? Again, going back to like the teachers along the journey. And to me, it's your job as a teacher is to encourage and nurture and not critique. And so probably along the journey somewhere, somebody said, "Hey Spencer, you ain't that great at scenic games." Or somebody goes, "Yeah, you're not getting this, man." So they somewhere it was planted in your brain, and
Mhm.
our brain loves the negative. So our brain goes, they're right. That person is right. Like,
Mhm.
because your brain is about protection and your brain is about threats. It's not about helping you feel better. It's about, I have to assess this situation. What's the threat? And so that's why it goes to the negative a lot.
Mhm.
And so somewhere along the way, you've been told that, and we start believing it. And then we go, oh, I can't do this game because I mean, that's the perfect example. You're at an audition. Of course, you're going to do a scenic game, the one you don't want to do. You're like, give me 185, give me world's worst. It's like, oh no, a scenic game. But if you switch that out and have that attitude you're talking about of like, I'm just going to play it like a kid. Kids are kids love when you say things in a silly way, and
Mhm.
that to me is another key to improv, is like how you say something. And so having those moments
Oh,
of just
yeah.
making a strong physical, like that's a great note too, of like, I'm just going to make a strong physical choice, nothing else. I'm just going to worry about the physical choice. And it leads to some pretty cool stuff.
Because a lot of times I feel like, at least for me, I like to ramble because I'm trying to, like, explain what I'm trying to say, and so, like, in improv scenes, I get that way too, where I'm like, I have this idea and I'm trying to figure out how to tell you, so I'm gonna keep
Yep.
talking until I get the idea out, versus me just going, "You know what? If I just start flailing my arms, I'll figure out what I'm doing. Oh, I'm the wacky flailing inflatable arm too, man." Like, I made a physical choice, I made a verbal choice. I don't know what's going on, but now I know who I am. I'm that wacky wailing inflatable guy,
And,
whatever.
and how cool was it that you made that choice? You're just like, I'm throwing myself on the floor. And then your partner's like, sir, let me add some context to your choice right here.
Mhm.
I
And
think
it's
that's,
great.
it's
It's
great.
literally, what do they call it? This is the baseball metaphor, winding up for the pitch, right? This person is like, here is the ball.
Get it
You just
out.
got to knock it out of the park, and and it's great because you also get that concept of, again, going back to the team sports and support, having a team that you trust, that you know, it's like, if I don't know where I'm going, I know someone on my team is going to be able to wrap it back. And again, if I'm doing a game, if I'm doing a game, if I'm doing a show with a team,
Escape, yeah.
and I'm like, "Ooh, I'm good at, like, puns. Let me get all those puns in there." I don't want 7 other people who are also good at puns, because that's not gonna help us with scenic games or whatever the case is. I need, like, a good scenic player, a good pun person, a good person, maybe a well-rounded person who can kind of fit in anywhere. But that's what I don't think people realize, and actually we'll talk about this because I'm gonna ask you about teaching and stuff. But one thing I don't think people realize, it's not just like, I like these 8 people, I'm going to put them on a team. There's a lot that goes into calculating how to formulate a team. So as a teacher, as a coach, what are some things that you look for in an improviser? Like, what makes a good improviser, and how do you kind of, like, if you were to build a team, how would you kind of make that work?
Well, one thing, that's a great question. One thing you learn at some point is you have to learn how to play the show,
Hmm.
not the scene, not the characters. You have to know, what is my place in this show tonight?
Hmm.
Sometimes your place is, oh, Spencer's fucking crushing it. Let's give him the spotlight this show. Let's do what we can to set him up. The audience loves him. Let's do this. Oh, this show, I'm going to take care of the edits. I have an idea for an edit based on the suggestion. It'll tie things together. That's my, some shows you're like, ooh, I'm kind of the enemy. That's okay.
Hmm.
That's okay. This show, this audience isn't connecting with me. How can I use that as, to my advantage, to make you look better as we're going? So you need to
Hmm.
learn how to play a show, and it's not just the scene work. So that's another part. If you talk about a team, is how do you play the show? And my training, like yours, was comedy sports. Like I got into comedy sports in Chicago, and I started on as the announcer. No, I think I first pulled lights. They're like, you're
Hmm.
gonna just pull lights to find out where the out was, which was a great training. Then they're like, now you're going to
Hmm.
graduate to Mr. Announcer. So you have to know the rhythm of the show. And then I got to see a bunch of shows before I did a show to understand what that show was. So, like, that was a big part of it. If you want to audition for an improv group that's already existing, or a theater that's already existing, go see their shows to know
Hmm.
exactly what kind of stuff they like to do. When you go through classes, sometimes a lot of times what they present on stage is not what they preach in the class, and I've had an issue with that for years. It's like, don't preach slow patient comedy if what's on stage that people are striving for is fast quick comedy. Just teach fast quick then. Don't
Hmm.
But don't go, we're teaching this not to go for a laugh, and then everything you see on stage are people going for the laugh. So just be aware of that. See what's on stage. When I look for improvisers, I look at people who have, in one way, kind of short memories, meaning, And again, another sports metaphor, like with the winding up, or like I was told it's like volleyball, like I set you to spike it, like it's
Mm-hmm.
that. With short memory, it's like a relief pitcher in baseball where you go, I just gave up a home run. Can I forget about that and move forward? Meaning, like, I just had a scene that I felt was clunky. Can I forget about that scene and go, it's going to come back in the end? We're going to make this make sense. It's going to be fine. So, like, for me, people who have an attitude is so much more important than what skills they possess, or like, could they do that cool edit technique? Like, I don't care as much about that. I look for people who I'm like, A, if I'm rehearsing with them, can I hang out with them for the 3 hour rehearsal once a
Mm-hmm.
week? B, when you come on stage to audition and somebody says, hey, tell us something about yourself, they're really looking for you just to be yourself, to be a heightened version of yourself. They're not looking for you to be clever. It's like,
Yeah.
can you just walk on and say, hey, I'm Jay. I'm the father of 2 kids, and the Beastie Boys are the greatest band ever. Like, can you just be a little bit of a bigger version of yourself and
Yeah,
not
and to
do
piggyback off of that, they don't want if you say, "Tell me about yourself," they don't want you to be like, "Well, I have improv experience doing this," and they want literally something that's not improv, not acting related. They want
I,
something else.
there was a guy who was like, I've been doing improv a lot. And we said, no, no, tell us something that's nothing to do with improv. And he goes, I don't know. I'm getting my doctorate in mathematics. And it was like, whoa, dude, lead with that. That's
Yeah.
the stuff. So I look for that when I'm watching an audition. If people are on the sides, I'm watching when they're not on stage, but what are they doing on the side?
Mm,
Are they paying attention to what's happening? Are they like ready to go? Are they looking around? Like, I want to know what they're doing when they're not on stage
mhm.
as much as when they are on stage. I like,
Because Holly Laurent gave me the metaphor that, like, made me love improv. I love Holly Laurent. She was,
yeah.
my director, for and teacher for 5B, which for those who don't know that, it's the graduate it was what when I was taking iOS, the graduation, graduation, level of the program. And I was this person who I was always on the sidelines, not because I was hesitant to go on stage, just because my brain is very analytical. So I
Mm,
would be like, oh, this would be a good out if they do something like this, or like, oh, I could bring this character back in this situation, or like, oh, what would be a good button for the whole show? Like, I'm one of those people who can kind of piece those things together. And at one point, someone's like, you need to come on stage. I'm like, just pull me on stage. I'm so focused on what I'm doing. Just pull me on stage. I'll do a scene. I'm not like avoiding it. I'm just not paying attention to going out because I'm so focused on the other things. And Holly Laurent literally said one day in class, she said, think of improv like a basketball court. When you're on the sidelines, you're on the court playing. And when you're in the scene, you're on the bench. And I went, holy crap. I was like, being in the scene is easier than being on the sidelines. And this whole time, I've been so focused on making sure I get everything in the sidelines that I've been working so hard for the sideline stuff that I didn't realize I was actually putting more pressure and doing more work than just being in the scene. And so that was one of those big moments that, like, finally, the last like class of IO
mm.
that I took, I was like, oh, I understand how improv works now. And so that metaphor was so great because I was like, oh, I can just chill when I'm on stage doing a scene. I don't have to worry about anything because I know that the rest of my team is going to support me. I know that I don't have to worry about anything other than listening to what my scene partner is doing and responding to that. That's all I have to worry about. I don't have to worry about the edits. I don't have to worry about what's coming next. I don't have to worry about where to take this character. All I have to do is worry about that one person, what they're saying, and responding to that. And it made it so much more exciting. And I was like, oh, I'm doing the hard stuff.
And she's just brilliant too.
Yeah,
She's
she's great.
amazing. And
But
like,
it's one of those things where, you were talking about how you're looking at people on the sidelines to see if they're like staring off into space, if they've tuned out because it's not their time to shine, or if they're still being there as a support. And so I love that it's like, for someone for like me who's really good at sideline work, but maybe isn't the greatest in a scene, that you're able to see that as well. You're like, oh, this guy knows how to edit. He knows how to do this. I know that I can use him for that kind of a spot in the team. And then you've got other people who are really great at doing scenes, but they can't edit anything to save their life.
oh sure. And like, we forget the audition starts when you walk in the door. It's not,
Mhm.
it's like as soon as you walk in, you're being judged. And one year we were doing these coached ensembles at Second City where like teachers got to run people through auditions and then pick a cast. And one year my buddy John Hildreth was like, I'm only picking brunettes. So like If you're not a brunette, like that year wasn't your year
Yeah.
for that. So the audition is like, it's so haphazard. A lot of times the people auditioning don't know what they're looking for. They might say they do, but they don't know.
Hmm.
And most of the time, if I'm just auditioning for a group, I don't really have a preset. I'm looking for, I need a wild card. I need a this. I don't look for that. I'm like, who, sometimes it's like, can this person take direction? So I might go
Hmm.
like, hey, Spencer, can you do that again, but pretend you're a mouse? And I'm not even caring what the output is, but it's like, will this person take direction? Will they
Hmm.
go sure, and then give it a shot? And if they fail, will they keep doing it? That to me is, because in a show situation, you have to be able to do more of that, and I have to be able, as a director or a coach, I have to be able to give feedback to have you try it. And so I'm looking for more of that than I am for like, oh, you nailed that audition. I got a buddy who went through A through E in Chicago, which is the improv program in Chicago before the conservatory. He went through that
Hmm.
with Tina Fey, and they were in the same class together. And when that class came time to audition, everyone but Tina Fey made it to conservatory.
Hmm. Yeah, I think she auditioned
Everyone,
what, 3 times or something. She
yeah,
auditioned
and it
before she
was,
finally got in.
I knew it was at least twice, and he said, "Yeah, I had the best audition of my life." He's like, "It was. I could not have had a better audition." But he goes, that tells you all you need to know about auditions. Is like, don't put your stock in that. And if you go like, I have to get this audition, it's desperation is pretty ugly, and you can. Effort is ugly, and you watched on stage and you watch people. It's like dating. It's like dating when you come on stage and you're like, "Hi, my name is Jay, and I like to take pictures with a camera." It's like immediately I go, "Well, that's not for me. Maybe somebody else." But right away, I'm like, they can't even just be themselves and
Hmm.
project on stage.
Hmm.
That's also another thing, Spencer, to be honest. I'm looking for, can you project on a stage? Because a lot of times it's like people don't have stage training when they're improvising.
That's true.
So it's like, do they just face out to the audience and project? And they do it with a smile. If you could do all of that, I'm pretty confident casting you. But if you mumble or you turn your back, I'm like, it's hard. So, but
Yeah.
you're up against so many things you have no control over. All you can do is control what you do. So, like, do you walk in the room? Do you feel confident? Just prep yourself. Like, what do you have to do to feel good to walk into a space? Just to be like, this is another chance to perform. It doesn't,
Hmm.
not my worth as a person. It's definitely not my worth as a performer. I'm just
Sure.
getting a chance to perform and show these people. And sometimes you go, you Spencer, you'll call someone and go, I didn't see you, I didn't cast you in that last show, but I'm doing this other gig. I think you'd be good for it. So sometimes you get auditions that way, where it's like, you
Mhm.
weren't right for that part, but then for this other part, I think I really want to use you. So you never know what can happen, but you have no control
Absolutely.
over
Yeah, and as someone who has a master's in directing, I have to say that one thing struck a chord with me is the can you take direction? And what's interesting is, I feel like a lot of times actors, and as an actor myself, we're very delicate, we're very fragile. Like we can't,
it.
we can
So
take all this
fragile.
rejection, but we can't take this
Yes.
rejection. It's like a weird thing, but people always say they'll like do a scene and then at the end they're like, is that what you were going for? And I was like, I don't know how to answer that because I don't know if it's what I don't know. I don't know. I'm a director. I have no idea. I got a million other things I'm doing. I don't know what's going on.
I
And
got so
so
much other stuff to deal with
right.
at times than that.
Right. And then it's like, people are like, like, let's do it again and let's try this. And then people are like, is that more of what you were going for? And I was like, honestly, I just want to see that you can make it different. I
Yeah.
Most of the time I don't like, I'll see the performance when I do it on camera. I'm like, oh yeah, they got it. But if I have you do a take 3 or 4 times and you're giving me the exact same thing every time, I'm not going to get what I need. But if I say cry and you laugh, at least you do something different than the first. Like, as long as I see something different, then I know that I can possibly pull it out. Maybe my direction's not great. That's another thing. It's like maybe you're not understanding my direction because my direction's terrible. And so it's like, as long as I can see the difference, but like if you tell me to like, hey, instead of being a cat this time, go be a mouse. Okay, yeah, sure. I'll probably get down, smaller. I probably won't do like this because that's still a cat. But if I'm doing this as a mouse, then obviously that's not great. Again,
I'm
with my object work, my
solid outer,
my
and now the
character work.
mouse is typing. Now the
And
type.
here's my whiskers.
But you're not asking do the perfect mouse, right? You're just like,
Right.
here's something. And sometimes you don't know. And sometimes you're like, I don't know, give me a different energy, because you're like, as a director, you know, you're watching going, I don't know what to change about this. I just know it's not working. So let's, I don't know, give me a different thing here. And then giving those people the freedom to try stuff and be like, let's try things. And so
Mhm.
when I look for people, when they come into an audition, I'm looking for people that generate just an amount of warmth and who are like excited to be there. You know, if I'm watching you improvise scenes and every scene's about an argument or how you hate being in this relationship, or I hate this balloon, I'm like, okay. Like I was at an audition once and somebody's like, we have a time machine. And it's like, ugh. And it's like, why? You can do anything. And then the response is, ugh. It's like, that's what's going to happen with your scenes. Like that to me is the
Mhm.
bigger gauge. I can tell more about those than like, oh, you nailed that character walk on. It's like, no, no, no. I can get a sense of how you play pretty quickly and give a little leeway for nerves too, because you're right. Improv auditions are fucking weird, man. They're
Mhm.
fucking weird and they don't really show a ton.
You can't
So that's
prepare
why
anything.
yeah, I'm like, I don't know. You're on a cloud. I want to give you a chance to play and see what your natural play rate is. And if it's
Mhm.
something that I'm like, oh, cool, I think that would work. That's great. If it's an audition where it's like you're seeing groups of people after groups of people, you're trying to like match up. Okay, person 3 from the first group, and
Mhm.
now person 6 from the last. Like it's very hard to do it. So it's kind of a crapshoot for the most part.
And that brings me into we have a couple questions left, but one that I think I'll kind of get my Capricorn brain to segue into it. Um, so I know that I've gone to auditions before, and it's like, there's no prerequisites, and specifically with like Second City long form teams when they first did the long form ensembles, I was like, I feel like I feel like I could handle this, I can do this or whatever. I went into the audition, and then I didn't get it. And at first I was like, oh, what a bummer. And then I was like, let me look at who's on the teams. And I was like, man, these people have been playing for 10, 15 years. And I'm going up against that competition. And this is like my second year of doing improv at that point. And so I was like, I feel pretty confident. And I said, I feel if I was in a group of people who maybe were at the same level I was, I would have had a better quote unquote chance, because it was like me being a small fish in a big pond versus a big fish in a small pond. But let's say, like, I've also had auditions where I'm like, I feel really solid, but my scene partner feels like they've never done improv before. And I'm not sure how to make myself look good, but also support my scene partner and make them look good. What would you say to someone who maybe they're an expert improviser and they're working with someone who's jumped into a scene for the very first time, has never done improv before, on how to make them both shine?
Oh, awesome. Well, I mean, you said it. Just listen and respond. I mean, that's
Hmm.
but I love, I have a, I don't know if I'm sadistic or what, but I love going to jams and being like, who is the train wreck on stage?
Mm,
That's the one I want to hop on stage with.
yeah.
That's the one I go, my job, what I was brought up as an improviser, I was told, make them look good. So I'm like, I want to take on the biggest challenge. Who here is the one that people roll their eyes at? And it's like, can I make them look as good as possible? I was in an audition for Second City's. I was one of the auditors for the conservatory, and it was a 3-person scene. The suggestion was you're at a campsite.
Mm,
2 people were arguing right away at the top. Third person was setting the tent up. Third person just fucking concentrate on that object work, man. They set the tent up. They would look over at the people, but did not say anything. That third person got into the conservatory
hmm
because they just sat there and they're like, they were reacting to what's happening. They were not engaging in it, and they were not trying to speak in the scene. A lot of
Yeah.
times we think we have to speak a lot more than we need to. So I would say like, talk less. Your
hmm
scene partner's pretty much always going to talk. Very few scene partners won't talk. They'll want to fill that silence with dialogue. Then let them and be like, how can I make this person look good? What is their choice? How can I support their choice? You know, most sometimes you'll even hear at improv auditions, if it's like later in the day, you'll hear like, and please don't fight. And what they're telling you is there's a lot of fighting
Yeah.
going on. Like
Mhm.
nobody's ever gonna pull you out of scene and go, hey Spencer, that audition was great. If you added more anger at your scene partner, you would have nailed it.
Mhm.
Never. But
Mhm.
I know so many people like John Lutz, Craig Euler, who were told by people, hey, dude, if you don't get angry this audition, you're going to get it. And it took them 8 times to audition for Second City or these places. And it's the same thing. It's like, we don't want to see the anger. We don't. So do what you can to avoid that anger and that argument. But as you perform, I think what those people who had experience over you had at that point, I don't think was talent. Honestly, I think it was when you perform enough, you just assume the scenes are going to go well. And when you're a newer performer, you're afraid that they're not going to go well. But when you
Mm-hmm.
do enough scenes, you're like, this is going to be fine. And you go, this is, of all the scenes I've done, that was the most recent. That was, of all the scenes I've done, that was one of them. And you move on. So when you're in those audition situations and you find yourself like not sure what to do, take a breath. A real simple tool to have is repeat back what they just said to you, but with emotion. Wait, you bought a ski mask? Just say that, because it shows that you're listening. But like, go easy on yourself for these auditions too. Too many times we don't yes and ourselves. Like, that's the number one thing you got to do is yes and yourself. So take a breath, say like everything's gonna be okay. Before you walk in, say what I'm gonna do is good enough, and then go, I want to have the most fun I can right now. I did a scene with my buddy Tom Blanford where we auditioned for the touring company of Second City. The suggestion was the Oval Office. And I went like this, the old Secret
Mm-hmm.
Service bit,
Mm-hmm.
not
Yeah,
in
the old bit.
the old bit of like, I'm in the Tom goes like this. And he goes, this is great. He goes, yeah, I won this tour in a radio contest. So he had already set the stage of having me be on a tour, like the most fun he could have in that moment. And that was his mindset, is like, I'm going to make choices that are fun. And I think the same thing. I think that throwing yourself on the ground for that audition was the choice that was the most fun in that moment. And then you go, if they don't get it, I'm going to be okay. If that guy says to you instead, if he goes, get up off the floor, you're embarrassing me in the supermarket, you're going to be fine. So
Mm-hmm.
you can't control what your scene partner does. All you can do is try to support it. And sometimes you say something that's supportive and they'll deny it. And you go, okay, but realize the auditors know that. They see that. If you're trying to make it make sense and you get denied and then there's a laugh from that, they aren't necessarily laughing because of the denial. They're laughing because they're like, I can't believe that you did that to your scene partner. And then they go,
Mm-hmm.
oh, Spencer, yeah, he tried in that scene. So like, they're aware of when scenes you're being steamrolled or you're not given the great opportunity. So don't be as concerned about that when you're in these auditions. The people behind the table, they can sense that. They know it.
I love that. I love that. It's great to get a little glimpse of the behind the table kind of
Oh yeah.
oh, now I know all the secrets. So the next time I do an improv audition, of course that doesn't matter because it's improv. Who knows?
Yeah,
That's the whole joy of improv.
exactly. And like, don't be put off when people walk into the audition room and they wave to the auditors like, hey. It's like they probably work together. Like, it doesn't mean they're guaranteed to get the spot. It just means that and to me, I don't ever do that. If I know somebody behind the table, I don't ever walk in and go, I just don't personally do that. So don't let that get you in your head if you're in a group like that.
Yeah, it's also weirder if you're like hi and you're like, oh, that person's gonna get it, and they don't get it, and then it's like, oh,
Totally.
that's now it's even more awkward. Ugh.
Totally.
Ugh. But then it's like, well, now I know that they really put the best people that they wanted on that
Yeah.
team in there because they didn't cast their friends.
And you might go, oh, like John Hildreth said, I want all brunettes. Or, hey, you had a great audition, but it's a very similar thing to somebody else who had this audition. And
Hmm.
so we're going with that person. Or like, you just don't know. You can't control what they're looking for. So like, just go in there, make a strong, fun choice, listen and respond in the moment. And it goes by very quickly.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. The whole idea of course, it's always like you can't have 8 straight white guys on stage. That's not going to really do much for you.
Well, it happened for far too long.
Well, yeah, that's now it's like you can't if you look like 6 other people on the team, that's probably why you didn't.
Yeah.
Um, but anyway, that brings me to my last question, which is the whole reason I'm doing this improv summit for those that are watching and listening. And I kind of prepped you on it ahead of time, but one of the reason why I'm doing this summit and one of the reasons that I want to talk with different people to get their professional opinions on this stuff is people always come up to me and they're like, Spencer, you do a lot of improv. Where should I take improv? And it feels like such a loaded question to me because it really depends. And then I have to feel like I have to like explain everything as to like, well, if you want this, you got to go here. If you want this, go here. If you want this, if you want this, if you want
Yeah.
this. If you're just doing it for a resume, but it feels like there's a lot because improv is so different no matter where you go. What is like a tidbit or some advice or a tip that you'd give to someone who just comes up and says, Jay, where do I take improv?
Yeah, and now it's really fun because it's global. It's no
Mm,
longer just in LA.
mhm,
Because if it back, pre-pandemic, you're like, you want to be a writer, UCB is probably a place to go. Do you want to do characters? That's a place to go. Like, so you could say these different places. Do you want to have fun and do you like whose line is it anyway? Then I would say comedy sports. Do you like
mhm,
genre? Then improv theater. Like there were places that, and I think it had to have the thing that made them stand out. That was the other thing. A lot of these theaters had to be like, what's your thing? I remember talking to a friend of mine who was she's like an acting teacher, lives in Santa Monica, and she's like, there's a West Side Comedy Theater was there, and I'm like, come see my show. And she goes, I didn't even know it was here. She goes, what's their thing? And not in a bad way, but it was like,
mhm,
what was the thing that differentiates them? So you could say that. Now it's like, do you want to learn game of the scene style? Well, there's Will Hines, but he doesn't just teach game of the scene, right? So there are so many people in the world that teach different things that I think you start off with asking them like, what do you like to do or what do you like to see? Tell me, why do you want to take a class? And if
mhm,
somebody says, oh, I love Whose Line Is It Anyway? I love the games. And you're like, great. So then you could take a class of comedy sports. You can take a class, even Second City has their improv program. So I think listening to them to have them tell you what is it. Now, if they go, give me a 20-second tutorial on improv, it's like, okay, well, there's global places now. I'm like, do you want to learn status? Then a place like Improv Comedy Bangalore, because in India they do a lot more status work, and you can go to a lot of these jams now too. So I would say, hey, check out some of these jams. Like that's a place you can go and see some of the styles of people. There's my friend Katie and Chris. They do over in the UK. They do the improv place, which is all virtual. It's the first
mm.
training center I know of that's designed to teach things virtually. So it's like, if you really dig this and want to take classes with some people who are gearing up more towards the virtual space, that's where I would say to go. So I think really it's a matter of like, tell me what you're interested in, and then I can tell you where the best place to go is. Like a group like Impro in LA does a ton of genre stuff. So it's like, if you want to learn how to do genre improv, that's great. The Hideout in Austin does like narrative long form very well. But again, you don't want to sell them short because they're like, they also do other stuff. So I say, hey, take a look at the website. You'll see all the types of classes they're offering. It's different now than it was before.
Mhm.
It is definitely a change because you have access to different teachers who don't have a home base anymore. So it's like, hey, do you want to take a class with Holly Rent? Well, there's no longer an IO. So if you, I don't know, go online and reach out to her, I'm sure now is the time for you to say, hey, I got 4 or 5 buddies. We want to take a class. Go talk to an improv teacher.
Mhm.
They will be able to teach you their way at a very reasonable rate compared to what it was before. And you'll be helping out that teacher as well. So
Mm. I love that. It's wonderful. And by the way, my genre improv classes have been an improv. I did Shakespeare and I did Jane Austen, and
so good.
they're both terrifying, but they were both great because I felt like I was being challenged, and I discovered with Shakespeare improv specifically that listening is so important because it's dialect that I don't hear every day, so I can't just kind of like listen and do something. I have to literally just be like, what words are you saying, and what does that mean?
Yes.
Before I respond. And
Yeah.
so like that it was a great challenge in that regard. So I think that, to sum everything up, listening is such a big factor in improv.
It's it, man. Right. And we said it early on. It's like,
Mhm,
it should supersede the yes and the yes is really the yes is I hear you. Like that's to
mhm.
me the yes is like I hear you
Well, that's
and let
great.
me add to this. And so I think the yes should be like assumed and the and is the important part of that, because the yes is like just assume that you agree with them and then add to whatever that thing is. But if you don't have that listening, it's very hard to you just have disconnect the whole time.
And especially if like, and this is a scenario that I've run into before, where it's like someone in a scene, it's like, stop annoying me, Mike. And what they want as an improviser is they want me to keep annoying them,
Yeah.
because that's what the offer that they've given me. Even though they say stop, because if I go, okay, I'll stop, then the scene's over. But it's not an argument, because I'm not negating what they're saying. I'm leaning into that by saying I'm not going to stop. And so
It's
I think that that's where sometimes it's like yes and doesn't necessarily mean yes, I'm going to stop annoying you and now I'm going to do something else. It means yes and means as an actor, I'm agreeing with what my scene partner is doing, but as an or as an improviser, I'm agreeing with what my scene partner is doing, but as the character in the scene, what does that yes and mean? What does that agreement mean? Sometimes it means to keep doing the thing that they don't want me to do, but sometimes it does mean don't do that. But that's,
it's
I think, where it becomes more complicated.
well, and you hit on the unwritten improv rule, the unwritten improv code, which is like when you say not to do something, the human behind it is saying to do it.
Mhm.
But again, it's isn't it just it's different scenarios. Sometimes that works, sometimes it I don't know. You just try. You have all these tools in your tool belt, and in
Mhm.
the moment you go, I'm going to try this, and then you go. For me, I go, what's the most tool I got? The most fun tool I got right now. I'm going to do that right now, and it depends on how well I know you as well, because I know some people I can do different things with than others. So it's just and it's being aware of what the boundaries are and all of that stuff. But really, if you just try to forget all the stuff before you go on stage. Just
Mhm.
try to forget all of that and just be like, I'm going to be in the moment and play with this person. You're going to be fine.
I love that. And I do know that it's improv, right?
Yeah.
And I do know that I said that was the last question, but I have
Yep.
one
Good
more
to see you.
question for you.
Thank you so much. Nope. That what?
Uh,
What? What?
but the last question I have for you is: would you like to do a 2 minute improv scene?
Yeah, I would
All
love
right,
to.
let's do it. Uh, a balcony is the suggestion.
Awesome.
Thank you, balcony.
Thank you, balcony. Right.
It's a nice view.
You can see the whole city from here. It's
See
panoramic.
all of Manhattan.
It's true, man. This is the city that never sleeps.
Yeah, it's what, like 2 in the morning, and there's still people running around on the streets, and I hear the music and all the lights are up. It truly is the city that never sleeps.
It's 2 a.m. here. It's 11 our time. It's 2 a.m. New York time.
At 2 a.m. Eastern, that makes it
Eastern.
what, 1 a.m. the central, no, 1 a.m. the
Yeah,
next time, and yeah, central, and then
Central, and then Mountain is
midnight Mountain,
midnight.
and then 11 Pacific, which means it's probably 9 a.m. In Europe, like Germany,
Mm.
China, and Asia is probably about 9 a.m. So it's like the next day. I guess technically it's the next day here too, because it's 2 a.m. But I guess it's like the full on next day after the sun's come up in Europe. I've
It's
never really
like
quite figured that out. Like, is 2 a.m. the next day, or is it still the same night?
I think it's the next day, and after midnight is a new day.
That makes sense. Yeah, yeah, it's but it's like 12 a.m. is midnight and
Yeah,
2 a.m. is the next morning,
it's
but
the
it's
next
still the
one.
same night. It's like this weird thing. My brain is just like, I don't understand exactly how this works, but the view's great. The view is really nice. I think we should get this one.
That is strange. It is strange that it's midnight, and then all of a sudden it's like it's not midnight 01. It
Yeah.
goes like midnight, then it's 12:01, and then it's 2 a.m. But it's still part of that. I feel like 10 o'clock, 9 o'clock, like starts the night, right? Like, well,
Yeah. Well, if midnight is 12 a.m., it means middle of the night is what I'm assuming it means, but that's not really the middle of the night. That's like the beginning of the night. So I don't know why they call it midnight. Midnight would be like 3 a.m. So
it's
then it
called big
must be
night.
the next day after midnight.
It's called big night, beginning night.
Yeah, big night. Yeah, I like, if it's a big night or if it's a small night, but a
It's a
big
big
night,
night. Yeah.
beginning, the beginning of the word beginning,
Beginning,
BEG,
yeah,
big
big
night.
night.
Yeah, I
And
like
then
that. I like that.
midnight should be 3 a.m. You're right, because that's the middle of it right there.
Right. So then it should be big night, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., midnight, and then I guess 4 a.m. is when it starts becoming the next morning.
Yeah.
But then why don't they have like morn day? Like like if you have midnight, you've got noon, which is 12 o'clock in the afternoon. What why isn't 6 a.m. like morn day?
It should be. I'm with
I
you.
think so.
This is, I mean, God, can't believe you're getting married.
No, in Manhattan of all places.
I mean, you're lucky.
I am. I am. I feel like this is the time to make a move, and this is the city that, like you said, it never sleeps. So this is going to be the city where we can kind of go out wherever we want, do anything.
See where you ain't gonna sleep. It's a different energy, you know. It's like a buzz. This city's like a buzz.
It is. It is. It's like, they've got what's that term? A buzz kill. I feel like you never kill the buzz here. It's just literally like everyone's on board.
It's like a buzz feed.
Yeah, it is like a buzz feed. Just keep watching, keep looking, keep growing, keep knowing. You just never stop.
Never
It's like an
stop.
addiction.
Did you ever think you would get married in this city? Like in your dream of dreams? I mean, before you met, you know, before you and Terry met, like, did you ever think it would be here? Like, or did you think, oh, I always thought I'd have like a destination wedding, although I don't know why. I always thought like I'd get married somewhere where there's like a beach and stuff. I have no idea why. I don't even like the water. But did you ever think that you would end up getting married? I mean, in this city?
Well, I never thought I'd get married, to be honest,
True.
but yeah, I mean, this city was. I expected to be somewhere out of the country, like Greece or
Mm.
Italy, somewhere along the Mediterranean. That's where I really felt like it would happen. But
It's your family. It's your heritage.
it is. I'm actually Greek. Yeah, it's on my mom's side, but yeah, I this place is nice, and Terry wants,
It's
her family's
nice.
from Manhattan, so
Dude, it's really nice.
it is. It's really nice.
Don't tell her you're from Akron, man.
I,
I mean, she knows. She knows. So she
I
kind
mean,
of
there's
doesn't.
nothing I can do about that.
Nothing you can do about it. But
I mean,
man,
it's more like I don't know the Zanesville, a little bit smaller, but it's
yeah.
yeah. I mean, yeah, that's on my dad's side, but
Mm.
yeah. Well, I mean, thanks for hanging out with me. I mean, I almost had cold feet, but I feel like you talked me back into it, so I appreciate
Oh,
that.
really?
Yeah,
How come?
it just feels like a lot. It feels like
It's a ton.
there's a lot a lot to this is the rest of my life.
Yeah, you don't get to date anyone else, man.
Yeah, you're right. At least you can do that.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't, and it's not. I just it's
Why not?
it's hard.
You're a catch.
That I thank you. Appreciate that. It's not that I don't want to. It's just it's very hard, and like I guess it's like grass is greener, right? Like you're probably thinking, oh, never dating again. Oh, that's scary. But for me, I'm like, oh, it seemed pretty great if I never had to make that decision again. It's a
Mm.
game. When you date, it's a game and it's a numbers game. I'm going on dates. Yeah, I'm going on 4 dates a week. And every time I sit down, I'm like, oh, it's like the same date. It's like Groundhog Date. Same
Mm.
thing, same restaurant. I never vary from the restaurant. I go to Miso's all the time, and
You do.
that's
You
it.
love that place.
I love it. I
Okay,
cannot get enough.
I'll tell you what you want. You want to be a free agent. You
I
don't
want to
want
be
to
a
be tied
free.
down to anything.
That's right. I don't want to know. Here's what it is. I don't want to be tied down. You're right. I don't want to leave. I just want to know that I can leave.
Mm, I love that. That's beautiful. I'll tell you what I don't want. I don't want to leave this city.
No, nor should you. It's a great. This is a great city. It's a great city.
Some might say it's the place where dreams are made. That's what dreams are made of. You know the phrase.
Yeah, both of those work. Dreams are made, or dreams are made of. I thought you were going to launch into a pun. You set it up like you were going to do one of your puns where you're like, some might say. And I thought you were going to like finish a pun with that.
I'm a changed man now.
I thought it was like, You know, some might say this is actually man, hat, can. Like that's what I thought. I was like, oh, I might do that, but it's okay
Man,
to change. It's okay to change.
man, I wish I hadn't thought of that.
Up top, dude. Up top. Bam.
And scene.
You can never top a high five.
All right, thanks everyone so much for coming to Improv Summit. That's Jay. See you next time. Bye.